This is a continuation of chapter one, and so Darwin was the one that works on evolution, and he concluded that fossils and other evidence that we have document the evolution of life on Earth uh, over the 3.5 billion years that prokaryotic and then eukaryotic came into existence. Now, so these are the things that its experiment or its observations were based on. He concluded that so there were 2 points. He said that all species showed evidence that they actually descend from an ancestor, and so we call that descent with modification. So it means that every trait that an organism have, it's actually a modification of of an existing organism. All right. So we call it descent with modification. Descent means to evolve. Descension, evolve. All right. So they evolved with modification. All right, from an ancestor. All right, so that shows that most of the time, most organisms have common ancestor, and what we see as evolution are just modification from that ancestor. And then he also made the point that natural selection is the mechanism behind descent with modification. That the evolution that we see is based on natural selection. And natural selection, the key word there is survival of the fittest. All right. So we're saying that it is the fact that some organisms are able to survive unfavorable condition. They were able to survive conditions, climate that other organisms cannot survive. And that is why they are able to evolve new traits, which now separate them from their parent offspring. I mean, the parents in quotes now. So all he was saying is the modification that we see, it's simply based on adaptation. It's simply based on the fact that some organisms need to survive. Survival of the fittest is what led to those modifications. All right. Now, these are his observation. He observed that that individuals in the population vary in their traits, and many of them are able to transfer such traits to their offspring. The inference he now made, the conclusion he made from that is that individuals that are best suited to the environment are more likely to survive, and when they survive, they are only fit because they are also able to reproduce. So survival and reproduction. He also observed that more offspring are produced than the one that survivor, and that competition will always be in existence. There's no way to eradicate competition. So over time, he concluded that more individuals in the population will have advantage over others. They're going to have advantageous traits as they compete, which will lead to survival. He also had observed that species generally suit their environment. All right. Then, in other words, he said the environment selects for the propagation of beneficial traits, meaning that traits that are able to survive in an environment will increase, and traits that are not able to survive, that does not help survivor, will regress. So that's what happens sometimes when we say some traits are vestigial traits. Vestigial. I'm going to write it there. When we say some traits are vestigial traits, it simply means that those traits are not used, and due to lack of usage, they have become vestigial. All right. So that's it here, vestigial. They have become vestigial traits due to lack of usage. All right. He then called this process natural selection. So the issue of natural selection, which is coined as survival of the fittest, was the work of Darwin. All right, so he came up with this, that these are population with varied inherited traits. And then he said that the traits, some traits that are not favorable are getting eliminated. And you see that the population, some of this population have reduced over time. And then what you're going to see is that this ash color are going to increase, they will survive. And what's going to happen? These will be eliminated. The white one are going to be eliminated over time because they don't have the traits that are conducive for survival. So natural selection selects them out. Then what you see here is that the traits that are able to survive continue to increase. All right. Now, so what we call the tree of life is simply to draw an, in quote, an organogram or a family tree. So tree of life is the same thing as family tree, and it's also the same as phylogenetic tree. And phylogenetic tree is simply phylum genetic. So I call it it's called phylogenetic tree. All right, phylogenetic tree. Now, the forelimb of a human, for instance, now, foreleg of a horse, the flipper of a whale, and the wing of a bat, all of them share common skeletal architecture. So we say that those organisms, we say that they are homologous, those structures. We say they are homologous structures because they are the same. Now, the shared anatomy of mammalian limbs reflects inheritance of a limb structure from a common ancestor because they are coming from a common ancestor and they have similar structures. So we say they are homologous. Now, diversity of mammalian limbs results from modification by natural selection over years. Now, when a structure is similar in different organisms, like you see here, 4 limbs of human, 4 legs of horse, flipper of whale, wing of bat, all of those are homologous structures. But when a structure is not homologous, but they share common function, we say that is analogous. So analogous is common function, homologous is common structure. All right, so he proposed that natural selection could be the reason that some species will give rise to 2 or more descendant species. For example, like you see in finch species of Galapagos Island, they are descended from a common ancestor. He also concluded that evolutionary relationships are often illustrated with tree-like, which is what we call a phylogenetic tree. And I'm going to show you a phylogenetic tree. Now, this is a phylogenetic tree. You see this tree showing the common ancestor here, and it's showing how so you see here, let me use my annotations. All right, so here this is the common ancestor, which all of these other ones relate with, all right? So these are descension from this, okay? This guy descend from the common ancestor, and that's that guy right there by itself, all right? Then this also descend from this common ancestor, just the same way the insect either they are descended. Now these now split into into different one, into the vegetarian. This continues again and then split again and split again. Now, phylogenetic tree are usually built on graphs. So in quote, there's a way to check in an ideal phylogenetic tree, there's a way to check the timing. The tree tells the timing of their evolution or their descension. So you can say that these two descend at the same time. And then you can see that the bud eater continues, whereas these descend later. Now you can see the insect eater now descend, open up, evolved, broke down, or the woodpecker evolved from the insect eater, and that continues that way. So it shows their timing just the same way the graph runs, and it shows, the timing of evolution as they evolve. All right, now what do we call scientific theory? That's what I'm going to look at briefly before I stop. Now, scientific theory, the word of science is derived from the word to know. So that's why you see science or research is simply based on trying to know something. It's based on inquiry to know what is happening and what is it. So let's go and look at those. Now, when we say we make observation in biology, observation or in science is determined by when you say you have an observation, the issue is going to be what did you observe? So we make our observation in terms of data. So you are measuring people's height now, you're going to put the dates there, the heights there. You are checking your weight every day to see what the impact of your exercise on your weight. You're going to record it daily and see what's going to happen at the end of the month. All right. So we have two types of data. We have the quantitative data and we have the qualitative data. The quantitative data are the data that be quantified, right? They can be measured with numbers or with tables, with graphs. Those are quantitative data. So the issue of height, for instance, is quantitative data. You can quantify it with number. When you go to the hospital and they had to measure your temperature, that can be quantified. So that is a quantitative data. When you go to the hospital, they measure your height. That is quantitative data. You go to the hospital, they measure your weight. That is quantitative data. Now, but you cannot go to the hospital and they're going to measure your pain. There's no way to measure your pain. Your pain can only be qualified. And so I had a friend that went to the hospital sometime. She was pregnant, and the doctor asked her on the scale of 1 to 10, what is your pain? And my friend said 15. Now, what does that mean? My friend can only qualify her pain, she cannot quantify it. So because there's no way to measure it. So when the doctors even gave her a scale, she felt like whatsoever you are thinking in your head that is 1 to 10, what I'm feeling is more than what you are thinking. All right. Now, because you can only evaluate qualitative data. So in terms of beauty, there's no one that can say, I am number one. My beauty is number one. You know, even when when they want to measure, quantify some of the makeups that we use, powder, attachment, they put numbers on it. It's just the number. Another company can use different number and decide to go and say what a company called number one is my number 10. They can do that and decide to use instead of 1, 2, 3, decide to use 10, 20, 30 because they are only qualifying it, they're only comparing it. All right. So those are qualitative data. Intelligence cannot be measured. You can use parameters to analyze it, but in the real sense, intelligence cannot be measured with graphs, with numbers. So we call those qualitative data. All right. Yeah, you can think of intelligence like you can measure it based on people's performance on an exam, but that's just a way to bring it. You don't measure people's IQ. You can only qualify it. All right. You can't measure somebody's skin color. They can only be qualified. Okay. You can say this person is fair in complexion, this person is light in complexion, this person is dark in complexion. You can only qualify such. Now, inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So I will talk about inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. First, I will clarify between the two so that you don't confuse it. Now, we say that inductive reasoning draws conclusion through logical processes of induction. Now, through induction, you can generalizations are made from a large number of observations. For example, all organisms are made of cells was based on 2 centuries of microscopic observation. Now, what do we mean by inductive reasoning? Now, I'll tell you some premise, then I'll tell you how to induce and what it means. Now, when there's a premise that all known fishes, all known fish species in this genus have yellow fins. So you say that all the fishes that we know in this species, they have yellow fins, right? Now, and somebody now make a conclusion and say, any newly discovered species in this genus is likely to have yellow fins. Has that happened? Is it proven? So it is an inductive reasoning. You are just inducing based on what you know that this can happen. So it is not based on concrete details. It is just generalization, which may not be accurate. Now, what is deductive reasoning? Now, deductive reasoning will extrapolate info from general premise to make specific prediction. Now, what is an example of deductive reasoning? Deductive reasoning is this: a premise. All plants with rainbow berries are poisonous. These plants has rainbow berries. So all plants with rainbow berries are poisonous. This plant has rainbow berries. So what can we conclude from that? we can conclude that this plant is poisonous. Why? Because the plant have rainbow berries. Another premise, I am lactose intolerant. Lactose intolerant people get sick when they consume dairy. This milkshake contains dairy. Now, what's the conclusion? I will get sick if I eat this milkshake. Those are deductive reasoning because they are made from a pool of information to make specific predictions. Now, let me give you one more for inductive reasoning. This volcano has erupted every 500 years in the last 1 million years. The last one erupted 499 years ago. It will erupt again soon. Nothing ascertained that is going to erupt soon. You just made a generalization based on what you know. So you say that these people that come from this area are always smart. And you say this person is going to be smart. That is an inductive reasoning. There is nothing that has proven that this person will be smart. It is just a generalization. All right. So that's the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. Now, what is an hypothesis? Hypothesis is what you extrapolate, is what you bring out of a deductive reasoning. So, like the example that I use about deductive reasoning now, you said all plants with rainbow berries are poisonous. And you confirm that these plants have rainbow berries. Then it is okay to say this plant is poisonous. Now, we might now need to, that is an hypothesis. Now, we might now need to prove an experiment with an experiment that the plant is actually poisonous. All right. So now let's go ahead on how to test the hypothesis that are gotten from deductive reasoning. Now that tells us that since the hypothesis is gotten from deductive reasoning, it is not a guess. It is a preposition based on knowledge. It is something that you concluded based on what you know. So all hypotheses, when it is scientific, are based on science because there is a science behind the hypothesis. You don't just wake up and say, I have a dream that I'm going to perform this experiment and it's going to cure COVID. That is not possible. There must be science proving that this thing you want to do in the lab is able to attack virus. Because if what you are doing, it's, sometimes ago when COVID happened, many people became doctors, became researchers, and now they came online and say, I know that, you say, when you use this onion, it's going to attack all the bacteria. And I'm asking, is COVID a bacteria? Now, so if the science you learned is something that can attack bacteria, you cannot go to the lab and say you want to cure COVID. Because what you want to do in the lab is to attack bacteria and not to attack virus. Now, so hypothesis is educated guess. We call it educated guess in a way to just make it known to us that it's not a guess, it's something that is based on knowledge, it's something that is based on pool of information that you are extracting your information from. All right. Now, so initial observation may lead to multiple hypotheses to be tested. For example, observation, your flashlight doesn't work. If your flashlight doesn't work, what can be the likely thing? If you tell my daughter that this flashlight or this pointer is not working, what my daughter is going to tell you is to change the battery. If I get home now, for instance, and I say, hey, this flashlight is not working, my daughter is going to say, Daddy, let's change the battery. Because over time, she has known that when our toy does not work, I change the battery. So she believes that if anything is not working, most likely the battery is bad. Now, that is something based on knowledge. So it's an hypothesis. Now, so what is going to happen? The question is why doesn't your flashlight work? The issue is the batteries are dead. That would be an hypothesis. Another hypothesis is that the bulb may be burned out. That's second hypothesis. So let's test the hypothesis. How do we test the hypothesis? First is that the hypotheses are testable. Now, hypothesis can never be conclusively proven to be true until it has been tested. right? Hypothesis gain credibility by surviving multiple attempts of falsification. So if I if I have an hypothesis now, I should be comfortable to give that hypothesis to a different researcher and let them come up with the experiment. And there's nothing like it is my magic. I'm the only one that have the password. Once you have the layout of the method, everybody must be able to perform the experiment and come up with your results the same way. That's why when you have an idea like that, you publish it, because anybody that have your method can also perform the experiment and come up with the same results. So an hypothesis must be testable, it must be falsifiable. Now, I will go from here. These are all right. Now, prediction. My correlation doesn't match the habit. Uh, should suffer heavier prediction than native. That's a prediction. The group built on many silicon models. Um, just read this. Let me talk about the experiment. Now, the experiment, controlled experiment simply means that there is an experiment. I will talk about all of that, but in this shell. Now, there is a controlled experiment. Controlled experiment simply means there's a control. What does a control mean? A control means a standard. Now, when you get, let's say, you want to perform an experiment now, and I want to use students. I want to use student that takes orange juice in a 6 p.m. class are likely to do better than student that doesn't. Or, for instance, I can say students that take coffee to class in an 8 a.m. class are likely to perform better than student that doesn't. And so what will be my standard? I will have a control. Now the control may be a student that is just drinking water. So whenever the student is coming to class, it comes with a bottle of water. That will be my control. Now, then I will give a student, let's say, 100% coffee. Another student, 50% coffee mixed with milk. Another student, 25% coffee mixed with 75% milk. Now, then I want to check the performance of each of them. Then maybe at the end of the semester, after giving them exams, 4 exams, then I come up and say, the student that drinks water, let's say that student makes 80%. Then the student that drinks coffee 100% makes 50%. The student that drink coffee mixed with milk, 50%, makes 90%. And the student that drink coffee, 25%, and more of milk makes 50%. So I'll look at it, my control is 80%. That means if you just drink water, you are going to make 80%. If you drink coffee and coffee 100%, you're going to make 50%, meaning that your performance is lower than just water. So I won't recommend that. The person that drink coffee and 50% milk makes 90%. So that means that person did better than my control. So then the person that drank coffee 25% and milk 75% maybe sleeping and end up making 50% as well. So the same result with the person that make coffee 100%. So I feel coffee 100% makes you unnecessarily active and you may not be able to get better result. And so that means I'm going to end up recommending the 50% coffee, 50% milk. Now, that is what I've used my control to judge the results. That is what a control experiment mean. All right. Now, so we can have positive control and negative control. Positive control simply means that I already know that if I want to test for sugar now, for instance, if I use glucose as my positive control, I already know glucose have sugar. So that is a positive control. If I want to test for sugar, for instance, and I want to make negative control, I already know that water doesn't have sugar. That is a negative control. All right. Now, a theory, after I have my hypothesis, test my hypothesis, do the experiment, come up with results, come up with observation, come up with conclusion, then I make a theory from it. So a theory, it's a verified hypothesis. All right? All right, so I'm going to stop here and see you in the next chapter. Thank you.